Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. More stories are coming in from Canadian passengers who say they were stranded by Sunwing Vacations. The totals are in from the CP Holiday Train, which collected both cash and food donations for Canadian food banks. And Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says he's not a fan of the profanity-laced Trudeau flags, but understands why Canadians are angry at their government.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. Lethbridge police were called out to report of an explosive device inside of a moving truck on Tuesday afternoon along the 1000 block of 13th Street South. Police say all occupants were able to get out of the vehicle safely, and nearby homes in the area were evacuated as a precaution. During their investigation, police say the bomb threat was unfounded. They arrested a male suspect in connection to the incident, and charges are pending. Some Sunwing travelers from Saskatchewan say the airline is leaving them at airports in other provinces. Patrick Gobe of Prince Albert says his group of 11 people had to rent cars and drive home after Sunwing flew them back to Canada more than a week late and left them at Calgary's airport. The carrier has been scrambling to bring hundreds of passengers home from destinations including Cuba, the Dominican Republic, and Mexico after winter storms disrupted its operations over the holidays. A number of Sunwing customers, including those from Ontario, are pretty upset right now.
It was actually very frustrating. They didn't have any information. The Sunwing representative that was at our hotel had no information for us. We were actually telling him all of the delays. It was a nightmare. It was scary. We're in a foreign country and we didn't know what to do or who to turn to. As a matter of fact, we didn't come home with Sunwing. We actually booked another flight to come home, or we would probably still be there.
Now, Bridge City News reached out to Sunwing Vacations for a comment, but has yet to hear back. Sunwing also announced a temporary suspension of services to both Regina and Saskatoon until February the 3rd. The president of the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms was arrested in Calgary on December 30th and is facing charges that include attempting to obstruct justice. Police say it was in connection with a 2021 incident into an alleged attempt to intimidate a Winnipeg judge. John Carpe was arrested with the assistance of Calgary police based on a Canada-wide warrant with charges issued by Manitoba Justice. He has since been released and will appear in court on February 21st in Winnipeg. John joins us now from Calgary to discuss the incident. So, John, this is your first time in jail. Talk about that experience.
It was miserable. It was unpleasant. It was uncomfortable. I was in a cell and just concrete only. There was no cot, no mattress, no pillow, no blanket. And I was in there for 23 hours. So I didn't get much sleep because no matter what position you lie down on, unless you're used to sleeping on concrete every night, it's pretty uncomfortable.
Now, John, you temporarily stepped aside as president of the Justice Centre after you admitted in July of 2021 that you hired a private investigator to tail or track Chief Justice Glenn Joyal. Now, you apologized to the judge. Wasn't that enough? Shouldn't this be case closed?
Just baffled with these 17 months after the fact. I suddenly get a phone call from Calgary Police Service saying there's a Canada-wide warrant out for my arrest and that there's criminal charges. I was just shocked. I put all my cards on the table in court on July 12th, 2021. I apologized to the judge. That was reported on by media. It was an open public court hearing. I accepted full responsibility for my decision to include this judge with other government officials. The whole purpose was to see whether these government officials are complying with COVID restrictions that they are imposing on the rest of the population.
Judge Joyal at the time was hearing a case involving 7 Manitoba churches represented by you in the Justice Centre. Now, you were challenging COVID-19 public health orders. Where do these cases stand at this point in time?
So the judge ruled against the churches, and he ruled in favor of the government's COVID restrictions. And then that decision has been appealed, and it was recently heard in December by the Manitoba Court of Appeal. And so we're expecting a decision sometime in 2023, hopefully reversing the trial judge.
Thanks so much for your time, John. That was John Carpe, president of the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms, joining us from Calgary. One of the main organizers of the Freedom Convoy 2.0 reunion says the event, which was originally scheduled for Ottawa, then moved to Winnipeg, has been cancelled. The reunion was supposed to take place February 17th through the 20th. James Botter of Team Canada Unity says the main reasons for the cancellation is that there's been several security breaches along with personal attacks against himself and members of Team Canada Unity. Botter says as a result, he cannot guarantee public safety or prevent Team Canada Unity members from being charged under Ontario's Bill 100 Act. Federal Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre says he is not a fan of the profanity-laced flags and stickers that a number of Canadians are using to denounce Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Poilievre says, however, that he understands why many Canadians are so angry and says it's up to the government to help them.
I don't like the flags. And I don't like rage, but I think we have to ask ourselves, why are people so angry? Like, why are people so angry? And the answer is that they're hurting. You know, it's easy for the political establishment to say, stop all your complaining. But when you're one of the 1.5 million people that went to a food bank in the month of March, it's not so easy. If you're one of the people that went to the Mississauga Food Bank and asked for help with medical assistance in dying, not because you're sick, but because you can't afford to live, it's not so easy. If you're one of the 38-year-olds living in your parents' basement because it now takes more of a monthly paycheck to own a house than at any time in recorded history, it's not so easy.
A 19-year-old Ottawa man has been arrested for alleged online threats targeting Parliament Hill, the Department of National Defence, and 2 embassies. RCMP say they were notified in November on what they're calling terrorism-related threats and death threats by a Twitter user. Daniel Hood has been released on unspecified conditions and will appear in court on January the 18th. The Alberta government suspended its provincial fuel tax on New Year's Day. Our province has some of the cheapest gas prices right now in the country. Now, the president of the Canadians for Affordable Energy, Dan McTagg, explained if we can expect those lower numbers to continue.
Prices have gone up on the wholesale price on the market in Chicago. So we've seen in the past 2 weeks gasoline go up 20 cents a liter. So I think $1.05 to $1.10 might be a little bit of wishful thinking. Generally speaking, it costs most gas stations here in Lethbridge and Bridge City about $1.20 to buy their fuel, maybe even $1.22 or $1.23, even after the provincial government's tax decrease. All in all, if you can get it for $1.20, it's probably as good as it's going to get for the foreseeable future.
Now, according to GasBuddy.com, the most affordable gas in Lethbridge is at Costco at $118.9 a litre right now, while the cheapest in the province is in Rocky Mountain House at $107.4 per litre. You know, we've spoken about the increase of residents here in our province. More and more people have been moving to Alberta. And a lot of that has to do with the government of Alberta's Alberta is Calling campaign. Well, now, according to Stats Canada, our country as a whole also saw an increase of more than 362,000 people from July of last year. That was the highest quarterly population growth rate since the second quarter of 1957. Our population is now close to 39.3 million people. The agency says we can expect to reach over 40 million by the end of 2023. You know, a lot of people in our region have been enjoying the mild weather across much of southwestern Alberta. Jeanette Rocher is now with an early peek of the forecast. Jeanette, we'll take it for the first week of January, right?
Yeah, we sure will, Hal. And by the way, Happy New Year. Yes, seeing the new year off to a lovely, mild start, with the exception of this Thursday when we'll be sinking into the minuses just a little bit, though, but mainly above average temperatures. Even into this evening, we're looking at an overnight low of -5, which is still well above the average low for this time of year. And into Wednesday, we're seeing a high of 1 degree, lots of sunshine. As we get closer to the weekend, though, we're going to be seeing those temperatures soar to 8 and even 9 degrees. I will be back later in the show to tell you all about it.
Yes, a Happy New Year indeed. Thanks so much, Jeanette. The CP Holiday Train was a big success again this season, with over $1.3 million and 121,000 pounds of food collected for the 24th annual event. People came together to brave the elements in areas like Medicine Hat, Brooks, and Calgary to watch the brightly lit train make its way through and enjoy some concerts while raising money and food donations for local food banks. The CP Holiday Train has now raised more than $22.4 million and collected over 5.15 million pounds of food since 1999. An upcoming award show is set to showcase the best in athletes, coaches, and volunteers here in Lethbridge. The Lethbridge Sport Council Achievement Awards will take place with a tentative date set for April the 4th at the NMAC Centre. Video journalist Micah Quinn chatted with staff from the Lethbridge Sport Council about these very prestigious awards.
It was actually the community that told us that they would like to have Sport Council have a community achievement awards.
Nominations are now open for the 13th annual Lethbridge Sport Council Achievement Awards. During the past 12 years, the awards have honored over 130 individuals, 11 teams, and 16 organizations. Susan Iman, the executive director of the Lethbridge Sport Council, says these trophies are vital in recognizing the important work that is happening right here in Lethbridge.
The sport is primarily run by volunteers, and they're the leaders, the administrators, the coaches, the officials. They run the events, businesses that support sport as well. We just want to celebrate everyone that's involved in sport in Lethbridge.
There are 4 main award categories, including Athlete Performance, Sport Excellence, Leadership, and Spirit in Sport Awards. Iman outlined the nomination rules for being an eligible candidate.
The criteria for nomination is someone needs to either be a resident of Lethbridge or be a member of a sport organization in Lethbridge or train in Lethbridge.
The deadline for nominations is January 31st, and you can put forward the name of a deserving athlete, coach, volunteer, or team leader by visiting lethbridgesportcouncil.ca. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
A Buffalo Bills football player who was critically injured in a Monday night clash against the Cincinnati Bengals has seen his total of raising cash online to buy toys for needy kids skyrocket. Bills defensive back Damar Hamlin, who is in a Cincinnati hospital under sedation following a hit, saw his GoFundMe campaign rise from $2,500 to now over $4.6 million. Hamlin was injured and needed to have his heart restarted on the field during the nationally televised football game. The game was suspended in the first quarter, the Bengals leading 7-3. Well, it's a new year, and around this time of year, many of us begin to set out some new goals and resolutions we'd like to accomplish in the year ahead. Kerry Kish, a local life coach, says it's very important to set long-term goals. He says, however, that the best approach people can take to get started is setting things called process goals.
So what do we need to do to accomplish that goal? And then being that those are the ones that are the guideposts that we measure along the way, that we give ourselves a pat on the back when we accomplish them. So when I go back to fitness, for example, I want to lose 20 pounds. I want to bench 300 pounds, whatever that is that you go back to that. And in knowing that the steps you need to take to get to that and having it scheduled out and then actually doing those things along the way. And that's what we celebrate. Because a lot of times then once we get to the goalpost, the processes that become part of your habits, your daily routines, you have the discipline to do it. Once you get to that goalpost, you keep doing those as a part of where you're going.
Kish says many times people don't ask themselves why they want to accomplish something and therefore will oftentimes not reach their life goals. Canada's Governor General says 2022 is a very difficult and monumental year marked by the death of Queen Elizabeth II. Governor General Mary Simon also says the year was filled with challenges as Canadians saw devastating weather events, high inflation, and experienced the emotion sparked by the discoveries of unmarked graves of Indigenous children at former residential school sites.
It was a year of change, of facing hard truths. It was the year of Queen Elizabeth II's passing. It was a year that brought us together to face devastating climate disasters, community-shattering attacks, and the pain and trauma of children's unmarked graves at residential school sites. It was a year of reconciling the past and the present with the promise of the future.
You know, many of us across southern Alberta were shocked by the disappearance and murder of Tia Blood. But whether it's missing and murdered Indigenous women or someone close to you, losing a family member can be painful and often unbearable. Deborah Manous is an Indigenous pastor based in Edmonton. She shared some tips on how to heal and move forward to a place of peace after losing someone quite close to you.
I found the most important thing is to acknowledge that I went through a loss, to acknowledge that I am going through grief, and that I need to look at the areas that had been very key in my life with this person, this individual. And it helped me to grieve. It helped me to accept it. and to move forward, because we do have to live our life as well.
Pastor Manus will also discuss the importance of family in times of grief and turmoil. You can catch the full interview with BCN's Naveen Day coming up in the second half of our program. A new report says the persecution of Christians is expected to increase in a number of countries this year, including in India and Nigeria. The study released by UK-based Release International says its findings were from its partners in the world's most persecuted hotspots. Now, according to Andrew Boyd from Release International, the country of key concern right now is Nigeria.
There are fears that Nigeria's presidential election in 2023 could be a step on the way to the breakup of that nation. Release International's partner in that country says every indication suggests Nigeria is at a pivotal point in its history. The 2023 elections will determine whether the nation will grow or disintegrate. Overshadowing these challenges are persistent attacks against predominantly Christian communities in the Middle Belt, and that persecution is now spreading to the central and southern regions. Fulani militants attacked Christian villages with impunity. Last year, they killed more than 6,000 Christians and destroyed 17 villages. Release International's Persecution Trends report also highlights the rise of Islamist extremism across Africa as a major cause of concern in 2023. And India is another country of concern, with growing persecution from Hindu extremists. More Indian states are passing anti-conversion laws. Karnataka became the latest in September. A national law to limit the right to convert may follow. Release International says persecution has been on the increase in recent years, and 2023 looks set to continue that trend. This is Andrew Boyd for the Global News Alliance.
Praying for persecuted Christians around the world. Wow. Well, it was a mild day in much of southwestern Alberta today, and the mercury will be going up even more later this week. Complete weather details are on deck. Well, we had sunshine mixed with cloud earlier today in Lethbridge, and not bad weather-wise. Jeanette Roche is in now with all of the weather details. Jeanette, the trend of seeing plus-degree temperatures should continue for most of the week?
Yeah, it absolutely should, Hal, with the exception, of course, being this Thursday when we're going to pop down to -3, but still above average for this time of year, or at least within that average range for sure. Into this evening, we are looking at winds from the southwest gusting from 40 to 60 kilometers per hour, so going to be a bit windy. The wind should remain as well into Wednesday, looking at a west wind at 50 but a high of 1 degree, mainly sunny skies as well. And then we get into Thursday with that -3. And then up to 7 degrees for both Friday and Saturday with lots of sunshine, and then up to 8 degrees for Sunday and Monday with partly cloudy skies. So I'm loving those 7s and those 8s. The average high for this time of year, -2. Average low, -14, 13. That was our high temperature on this day back in 2001. And it was, wow, -43 back in 1950. I'm so glad we are not there right now. 8:28, that's when the sun rose this morning and our sun set this afternoon at 4:43 p.m., giving us exactly 8 hours and 15 minutes of daylight. Okay, so looking to the west coast, a little bit windy in Victoria tomorrow. Winds at 20 to 40 but a high of 7 degrees with mainly sunny skies. Get a little bit cloudier in the afternoon. 7 degrees the high in Vancouver, also a mix of sun and cloud. -3 the high in Edmonton, and -2 the high in Calgary. Both of those cities remaining fairly sunny. A little bit of wind chill as well, though. We're still going to feel that factor. -12 the high tomorrow in Saskatoon with mainly sunny skies, a bit of fog in the morning. Same thing for Regina. Sunshine with fog in the morning. -13 the high and -8 the high in Winnipeg tomorrow with partly cloudy skies. Okay, we're going to see a little bit of precipitation, about 5 millimeters of rain expected tomorrow in Toronto. A 40% chance of flurries and or showers in Ottawa, and risk of freezing rain, high of 0, and a high of 1 degree in Montreal, also seeing a risk of freezing rain in the morning, and then periods of light snow or rain in the afternoon. Fredericton sitting at 2 degrees, looking at showers tomorrow. Same thing for Halifax, looking at 30% chance of showers, 4 degrees the high there, and Charlottetown sitting at 2 degrees. Seeing some periods of rain as well. 40% chance of flurries in the morning, and St. John's and changing to a 40% chance of showers by the afternoon with 60K winds along the coast, but a high of 3 degrees in St. John's, Newfoundland. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
Today's weather report is brought to you by Ridge Utilities, providing competitive rates for electricity, natural gas, and internet, while investing back in communities across southern Alberta.
A new report says Canada's 100 highest paid CEOs smashed previous records with the money they earned in 2021. According to the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, CEOs made 243 times what the average Canadian worker made, or around $14.3 million a year. The highest paid executives, who were mostly men, represented companies in tech, telecom, finance, and energy. The study found that most of the pay came not from their salaries, but from bonuses, stock options, and shares. The CCPA recommends several policy measures to curb executive pay and redirect some of the earnings toward critical services, including a wealth tax. The Competition Bureau has filed an appeal of the Competition Tribunal's decision to dismiss its case against Rogers' $26 billion takeover of Shaw Communications. It says the tribunal made fundamental errors of law in its ruling last week that the merger was not likely to result in higher prices for wireless consumers. The Competition Bureau says the Federal Court of Appeal has issued a temporary suspension of the decision until its application for a stay and an injunction can be heard. Tesla says it sold a record 1.3 million electric vehicles last year. That is up from 936,000 vehicles delivered in 2021. The 1.3 million is still shy of CEO Elon Musk's pledge of 1.4 million to grow the company's sales by 50% nearly every year. Sales did grow 40% year over year, while production climbed 47% to 1.37 million. Commuters who return to work after the Christmas break in the United Kingdom are advised not to travel as tens of thousands of British rail workers stage a fresh round of strikes that will disrupt services all week. About half of the railway lines are closed, with only 20% of services running amid a dispute over pay and working conditions. Many places, including Scotland and Wales, have no train service whatsoever. The strikes are part of a wider labour unrest in the UK that has also seen nurses and ambulance drivers walk off their jobs last month, demanding higher pay. Some of the great features so many of us enjoy in and around Lethbridge are our ponds and wetlands. They serve an important purpose in and around our farmers' fields. Kirby England teaches environmental studies here at Lethbridge College. He's also a local plant and wetlands expert. England says these wetlands are as important to the ecosystem as an organ is to the human body.
The sort of common expression is the wetlands are the kidneys of the ecosystem. They're doing all of this water filtration, removal of pollutants, removal of nitrogen and phosphorus, things that are pretty common around many a farmer's field. And so those wetlands are basically improving the water quality. They're improving the conditions for soil microbial activity for a variety of organisms. And so just as they're important to have within the city, they're really important to maintain out there on the land.
Make sure you catch that full interview with BCN's Jeanette Rocher and Lethbridge College's Kirby England coming up after business news. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 58 points on the day to finish at 19,443. The Dow was down 10 points to 33,136. The S&P 500 was down 15 on the day to 3824, and the Nasdaq was down 79 points to 10,386. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 333 to 76.93 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 49 cents to 3.99 US. Gold was even on the day at $18.39.48 US an ounce, and silver was also even at $24.01 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $12.19 per bushel, barley's at $9.73, canola's at $19.77, and corn is at $11.60 per bushel. Live cattle February contract was down $1.05 to $156.85. Feeder cattle January contract down $1 to $182.70. And lean hogs February contract was down $2.63 to $85.08. The Canadian dollar was even over the past 24 hours at $73.15 US. Recapping one of our top stories, the president of the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms was arrested in Calgary and is facing charges that include attempting to obstruct justice. Police say it was in connection with a 2021 incident and to alleged attempt to intimidate a Winnipeg judge. John Carpe was arrested with the assistance of Calgary Police based on a Canada-wide warrant with charges issued by Manitoba Justice. He's since been released and will appear in court to enter his plea on February 21st in Winnipeg. Wetlands are a very important part of our ecosystem. Coming up, we'll chat with a local wetlands expert, Kirby England from Lethbridge College, to discuss the importance of these wetlands for our agricultural community. Listen, if you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. We'd love to hear from you.
Here's today's Bridge City News community calendar. The Lethbridge Senior Citizens Organization is looking for volunteers to take part in their Drive Happiness program. This program is to help seniors in our community who are facing extreme loneliness due to lack of accessible transportation. Volunteers drive clients to their medical appointments, pick up groceries, and take them to important life activities. If you're interested in this opportunity and for more information, visit lethseniors.com/volunteer drivers. Do you have a heart to serve our community? Streets Alive Mission is looking for volunteers to help make sandwiches, sort incoming donations, assist with Foot Friday, and many other opportunities to serve, receive training, and to provide support for this important cause of bringing hope to the hopeless. Visit streetsalive.ca to fill out their volunteer application or call 403-320-1159. And that's today's Bridge City News community calendar.
Many residents in and around Lethbridge were shocked by the disappearance and murder of Tia Blood. Unfortunately, Tia is one of many missing or murdered Indigenous women. To talk more about the effect this has on the Aboriginal families in our province, we wanted to connect with Pastor Deborah Manus of Edmonton to talk about the struggles and solutions for those families whose loved ones have gone missing or have lost their lives. Deborah, thank you for joining us today to talk about this sensitive issue.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Likewise, Deborah, you are a Christian minister, so we want to start with your role in the community. When you are with a family in pain because they have lost a loved one, where do you even start?
Well, I begin by acknowledging that they are going through grief and that they are going through the pain of losing a loved one. And I ask them to look around who can support them, who it is that they can talk to if they're wanting to talk, because there are different ways that our people, especially the First Nations, like to express their ways of grief. And it isn't necessarily the same as other folks. Sometimes it is, where we get together as a group, we get together as families, we get together individually as well with other people. So a lot of it is in getting together in the community sense where we're getting, we're doing maybe feeding, having a meal together where we're getting together and talking about it, not even talking about it sometimes at first until the person is ready to actually connect. And then also going on to connect with other resources in the community.
Now, we've all lost a loved one and it's unbearable. Other than your church, are there community resources available to families whose mothers or daughters have gone missing or have been murdered?
Yeah, well, I was just actually thinking about that. Like in our community here in Edmonton, and I know in Calgary as well, there are connection to the MMIWG, which is for the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women organization, and they have a toll-free number that you can call if you want to have counseling. If you want, it's 24 hours. If you want to talk to somebody, which is very, very good, because sometimes it can be, very detrimental in that family. So there is that, and there is also other resources around that has, it's an amnesty program as well. There's another one that is for missing and murdered Indigenous women that you can connect with, as well as Indigenous Women on the Front Lines, which is my organization. and Shepherd's House Ministries, which is a ministry here in Edmonton. But we also, communicate with people from across the country.
Now, you mentioned earlier that First Nations have different or unique ways of dealing with grief. Can you talk about the importance of the family in times of grief and great turmoil?
Oh, yeah, it's very, very key. A lot of times, the family members will come together. They won't always talk about what had happened, but they want to have, the fellowship, the closeness, the connection with other family members. It's very important. And having that support within the family is very, very key in the healing process in regards to the trauma, in regards to the grief, and also being able to talk to other people, elders maybe, as well as counselors.
Now, it's very easy to dwell on grief and pains from the past. I lost my dad in 2003. It was very easy to dwell on that. And then I lost my mom right at the start of the pandemic. Do you have advice on healing and moving forward to a place of peace in the heart and mind?
Well, that's a very good question. I had lost my son during the beginning of the pandemic, and then also my father just actually in August. And I was really looking at ways of having support, ways of being able to deal with it. And I found the most important thing is to acknowledge that I went through a loss, to acknowledge that I am going through grief, and that I need to look at the areas that had been very key in my life with this person, this individual. And it helped me to grieve. It helped me to accept it and to move forward, because we do have to live our life as well. And we can't stay in that place, because, that is also very dangerous when we stay in the place of grieving in our entire life, because it stunts our growth, actually. So, in the studies that I have done personally, as a woman, going through, missing different family members and helping people grieving, and my own grieving as well, it had taught me that. So I think that's a big indication, is to actually accept it, to look at it, and also to talk about it, to share about it with other folks. And I was able to do that with family members as well as a counselor.
And you mentioned that you've lost a loved one in August. So can you tell us about how prayer and Bible reading has helped you personally through these hard times?
Well, the times that I was going through the prayer, I really believe that God had showed me the areas where I was not accepting the part of my relationship with that person, and the things where there was good memories as well. So all these good things began to happen in my life when I was accepting, these responsibilities in my life. And I began to accept the fact that, there was nothing that I could do. It was his time. He was an elder. He had lived his life, a good life. And it was time to let go. So that was the biggest thing for me, was to be able to let go, and that he was in a better place now, to accept that, to talk about it, to communicate with somebody that would listen, that was going through actually the same kind of thing as myself. It was my daughter. And I began to relate to her the different things that I went through with my father, and the things that I was missing, the things that I wanted to hang on to, things I wanted to let go of as well. So that was wonderful. And then also, of course, the Bible reading as well, that was helping me. I actually began during that time. It was just a coincidence, in my mind, but I know it was God's will. And it was the daily Bible reading by the evangelist Billy Graham. And I began to go through all the daily Bible readings, and it was so neat how, each Bible reading, it would go in hand with what I was going through. So that was wonderful. And I still, go by that each day.
Pastor Manus, do these issues of grief and loss go to a deeper level of the spiritual part of our lives? And if so, how is the battle between light and darkness overcome?
I actually was touching a little bit about it, how it does affect us in a very deep way. Like if we do not let go of the grieving process, and if we don't accept it, because I remember in my own personal life when I didn't accept it, when I had lost a family member a few years ago, and I began to actually get physically sick from not accepting it. It can actually affect us physically. And I didn't want to. And I know at the time, that I was going through something, but I couldn't accept it. So when I did, like it was probably about 8 months later, then I began to realize, yeah, I need to grieve. I need to accept this. I need to cry a bit. I need to talk about it, go for counseling and for prayer. And when I began to do that, then I began to have a deeper sense of who I was at the time and what I was going through in my healing process. So it is very important that we do talk about it with somebody.
And yeah, we've talked about having a community around you to deal with grief and pain, and I guess looking at the circumstances of missing and murdered Indigenous women, that would be the same, like having a strong community around you. But Pastor Manus, how do you feel the church and the message of the Christian religion can help with building a safe community?
Well, for myself and my family, we've had a very positive feedback with the church here in Edmonton. We have quite a few different churches where we have, connect. Because I'm a minister, I do connect with other ministers. So that was a wonderful resource for me and my family that has helped me. And, like I said, I'm involved with Regency's Shepherd's House and as well as Church in the Vine. So because of those ones, they have helped me quite a bit in my whole grieving aspect of the murdered and missing Indigenous women that were in my own personal life. I actually, in the first period when there was some murdered and missing women that were being talked about 20 years ago, was during the Picton murders. And one of my sister-in-laws was involved. So wow. The church actually, really supported me during that time, was really there for me. And I went through a lot of counseling, a lot of prayer, and that really, really helped me.
And do you feel that you have seen what you consider the root causes of missing or murdered members of your community that are not being talked about?
Well, I would say that the root causes it varies, because I had done this whole investigation under Indigenous women on the front lines, and what we had found, myself and my family, and the different people I was working with, was there was different situations, because there was some girls, coming, they were just going on their way home. They got picked up by somebody, by a stranger. Pardon me. Other situations that had happened where there was, a girl, she's in college, she's in university. She got picked up by somebody she's never, ever seen again. These kinds of situations. And one of the things that I had talked before was that it really troubled me, was that the fact that a lot of times these circumstances with these young girls and these women, their cases were never discussed. They were never brought out publicly. But, when there was somebody else from another race, there would be an Amber Alert instantly. And I was like, what is going on here? This is not right. And of course, the time period for when somebody goes missing is very important for them to look into immediately. So that was something that I looked into. That was something that I was very troubled by. And also the fact that a lot of people were not aware of it until just recently. And one of the things that's very key is that we need to educate ourselves. We need to know more about it, what is really going on out there. Why is this happening to our women? Why is that happening? One of the biggest things is that there's a lot of ignorance. It's not spoken about enough. It is not looked at as an important factor in our society that our murdered and missing Indigenous women, this is happening to them.
Now, historically speaking, there has been a lot of tension between the church and the Indigenous community. What has made you want to become a Christian minister?
Well, for myself, I actually had, at a very young age, when I was 5 years old, there was a wonderful Christian woman. She was Danish. She came from Denmark, and she came to this country, and God told her that she was going to minister to our people. And it was because of her reaching out. Her name was Mrs. Rasmussen. Her reaching out to our people. She, her and her husband, they rented a apartment building in the same building that I was at. They rented apartments in there, and they would have weekly Sunday schools in there in our building. And they went from house to house, from apartment to apartment, asking the families. And my mom said, yes, I would love for my kids to be in Sunday school and also Bible school. So we were in there all the time, my brothers and my sisters and I, at a very young age. And that had affected me in a tremendous way. And I had seen it at a young age. Like when I became older and I was a teenager, we seen revival break out in our community. So that had a great impact upon our lives. And it was, during that time that the church really, really helped us to grow as individuals. And it was the First Nations community, of course, that was there, and the pastors, and they were talking a lot about, how God is with us, that God is for us, that God can help us in every area of our life. And it was such a tremendous time, and it still affects me to this day.
Well, Deborah, we're out of time, but thank you so much for joining us today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for asking me. God bless you.
The city of Lethbridge has many wonderful parks and natural areas. One of the great features that so many of us appreciate about these natural areas are the ponds and the wetlands. And we wanted to take a deeper dive to learn more about the importance of these special places. So we asked Kirby England, who is a local plant and wetlands expert from Lethbridge College, to join us today. Kirby, welcome to Bridge City News. Great to have you on.
Thanks, Jeanette. Appreciate it.
Okay, so in addition to being on the faculty at Lethbridge College, you teach environmental sciences, right? So part of your biography also says that you're a riparian analyst. So maybe explain to our viewers what that is and what you do.
Sure. So that's a little bit of an older title, but I'll run with it.
Sure.
A riparian area is basically that transition between an aquatic ecosystem and a terrestrial ecosystem. So in Lethbridge, we're home to, I think, North America's third largest river valley park, which is pretty impressive. And because we're home to such a large river valley park, we're home to a huge amount of riparian area. And so as a former career of mine was as a riparian analyst with a group called Cows and Fish, which is, of course, sort of founded in Lethbridge, and many Lethbians will know well, or Lethbridgeans, I suppose.
Yes, exactly.
You'll know which one is correct. And so, yeah, I've kind of went on from that. I'm still a riparian area and wetland ecologist here at Lethbridge College, and also for my own environmental consulting firm, which is called Ubetula Environmental.
Well, then you would be the perfect person to ask this question to. Why are the natural wetlands that we see in the community parks around us, why are they so important?
Yeah, well, we should step back ever so slightly there. Few of the wetlands in many of our community parks are actually natural. There are a few, certainly along the river valley, some that were sort of formed by more natural processes. But a lot of the wetlands that we do have in the city of Lethbridge are engineered wetlands or designed wetlands, which is fine. It's sort of a benefit of having irrigation in the district, is there's all of this extra water to go around. And those wetlands play really important roles with regards to that water. They do lots of water filtration, extra water storage. And then, of course, the part that we can appreciate when we go to those spots is the huge amount of biodiversity that we're going to see there. So all of the birds that take advantage of the wetland, fish in some of those systems like Nicholas Sharon and Riverstone Pond near where I am. And then, of course, all of the beavers and muskrats and everything else we sometimes see in our city of Lethbridge.
Yeah, definitely. So can you maybe compare those with the importance of wetlands in and around a farmer's field, for example?
Definitely. So in both cases, the sort of common expression is the wetlands are the kidneys of the ecosystem. They're doing all of this water filtration, removal of pollutants, removal of nitrogen and phosphorus, things that are pretty common around many a farmer's field. And so those wetlands are basically improving the water quality. They're improving the conditions for soil microbial activity for a variety of organisms. And so just as they're important to have within the city, they're really important to maintain out there on the land. And the numbers on this are, approximate, but I believe it's about 78% of all wetlands in the prairie pothole region, which of course we're a part of, have been converted or otherwise removed. So it's really quite an imperiled ecosystem when 4 to 5 are already gone, and we're still continuing to convert those wetlands.
Well, everyone thinks that beavers are cool and, always busy. They can maybe sometimes cause problems for landowners. Do we have beavers closer to Lethbridge? I believe I've seen at least a couple.
You certainly have.
Yeah.
So one of the things we just did this last fall as part of some work with the city of Lethbridge was a sort of active lodge survey. And the numbers may have changed slightly, and hopefully I'm okay releasing this data, but we had around 15 active lodges sort of entirely along the river within the city of Lethbridge. So, you put it at around 5 beavers on average in each of those lodges. And, we may have anywhere from, say, 60 at the low end to 80 at the high end or 90 at the high end, but 75-ish beavers in and around our river valley. And many folks, of course, have seen them. And a real highlight in this city is the high level bridge, of course. And a real highlight for me as a beaver researcher was to find a beaver colony right up against one of the big cement buttresses of the high level bridge, and living basically right on the downstream side of that.
And did you find it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I was the first. And certainly when you're telling folks you're looking for beavers in the city, they're always going to say, oh, I know this lodge, I know this lodge. And so, but we did confirm, as of mid-October at least, that beaver certainly had built a good food cache there, meaning they're going to try and overwinter in that spot. So those Lethbridge folks who want to get out and see beavers, head down to the Helen Schuler Nature Center, take your trail network out to the riverbank, and you'll see that big, impressive beaver lodge right on the back.
Sounds awesome. And speaking of Lethbridge folks that want to get out and about, do you have any favorite natural areas around the city that would make for a great weekend afternoon visit that you could recommend?
Definitely. So, I mean, that's one of them. Head on down to the Helen Schuler and get onto that, the River Walk and Coulee Walk, any of those. I mean, Coulee Walk, less of a beaver spot, obviously, but certainly a good one. If you want to get a little more of a, wild Lethbridge experience, we like 6 Mile Coulee in behind Lethbridge College here. There's some active beavers in there at any point in time. I actually have some students out right now doing some willow staking and some habitat improvements with the Old Man Watershed Council down in 6 Mile. So definitely a good spot to check out. And then, even if you just want to sort of see a wetland and see some of this biodiversity, places like Helen Schuler, Nicholas Sharon are a good spot. Nice trails. You're going to get the full treatment there.
Wow. Okay, so switching gears from beavers to
Sure.
Let's talk about cattle. So while doing some research for this interview, my producer found that there were studies done using cattle grazing and native plants to regenerate wetlands areas down actually in Nevada. So that group seemed to have a lot of success in bringing the wetlands back to that part of the state. So have you done any similar research on the benefits of grazing cattle around wetlands in southern Alberta?
Yeah, so not me personally to the extent, I mean, with that group Cows and Fish, which is the full name, Alberta Riparian Habitat Management Society. That whole thing was born out of exactly what you've said, that, sound stewardship of riparian areas and wetland areas by livestock producers can really have huge benefits both to cattle and to fish. And of course, fish thrive on aquatic ecosystems. And a healthy, intact riparian area is just going to improve the quality of that ecosystem. And so certainly we do have that work being done in Alberta, lots of research to that. In fact, Cows and Fish is just celebrating 30 years, sort of in operation this Friday with a bit of a gala. So it's certainly something that's been ongoing in our province for 3 decades now. I don't do as much in terms of direct benefits of grazing. It's not so much the, cattle going in there and chewing down vegetation per se that's going to improve your wetland or your riparian area, but it's following those principles of range management and sort of managing with ecosystem function in mind that will improve overall quality. And that's what they've shown down in Nevada and elsewhere. And then, of course, beavers are a natural benefit to wetlands and riparian areas as well. They sort of manage those. And so there's getting to be a good body of research showing that too, that when you couple, beavers with bringing back the water and then cattle and good, range operations, there's benefits for the fish, for the water, for the wetland, for all the above.
Maybe so that viewers can understand it a little bit more and have has a little bit more impact. Are there any success stories or wetland renewal projects happening in Southern Alberta right now?
Yeah, lots. Sorry, putting me a bit on the spot with that. Okay. So one of the things, if you want to check out on actually the Cows and Fish webpage, is basically what they call demonstration sites. So there's been a number of ranchers in Southern Alberta that have seen sort of the benefits of sound riparian management, and they've presented themselves as demonstration sites. So they've kind of led the way. And I could quickly look a couple up. I'm just, Ellerts would be an example, and others. And then through the Old Man Watershed Council, one of the things they regularly do is host field tours and other things. And they get people out to see projects where they've done wetland and riparian area restoration and basically showcase the success of those efforts there. So either of those organizations can sort of point you in the direction of lots of really well done riparian and wetland improvement and stewardship projects.
Mm-hmm. Now, Kirby, what important function do the wetland plants and animals do in the winter?
Well, I mean, basically survive until spring when they can do it again.
Just like all of us.
Yeah, just like all of us, exactly. Try not to die. And, there's still, of course, the biodiversity benefit to all those native species that don't migrate, that stay here over the winter. Plants, even when the above ground vegetation is mostly dead, still have that root mass that's holding that soil together. So preventing erosion, preventing, sedimentation into the channel, kind of catching things that would otherwise wash into those wetlands. So they're still playing that benefit. And then, the wildlife species are still a part of an ecological community. So prey for predators and likewise predators to help manage prey populations and nutrient cycling and all those sorts of steps that never stop.
For sure. Okay, so let's talk about another field that you specialize in, and that would be plants. So what made you want to research and study plants?
Well, eyesight mostly. So I was going to be a wildlife biologist, and I start working, on a grizzly bear project. Well, that was fine. I could see bears and do that work. But then we're out there looking at birds, and what's this brown thing that just flew by? And somebody goes, well, that's a so-and-so. I go, I didn't get that. I can tell you it's a little brown bird. And that was just kind of the realization, like, oh, wildlife's really moving fast and you got to identify it. I like learning what things are. I like identifying them. I've always done lots of that. But with plants, you get time to sit there and look at it and really understand it. And of course, that's sort of a tongue-in-cheek answer. Really what it is for me and plants is they're just such a foundation of the habitat. And you wouldn't have the bird in the tree if you didn't have the tree. And you wouldn't, in our case, as we learned, have these big bears out on the landscape if there weren't foods, mostly plants, to sustain them through all the seasons. And so I just see plants, as many do, it's such a foundation to that functioning ecosystem. And although maybe not as charismatic as some of those, big mega carnivores and other things, the plants deserve our understanding and our respect. And I like to do what I can to help people better understand and appreciate plants.
Okay, so let me ask you this then. In the wild areas around Lethbridge, are there any issues with invasive plant species?
Oh, yeah, it's extremely abundant. So, all of Alberta that's subjected to agriculture and anywhere we've really had humans settle, you often bring plants with you from elsewhere. And initially, some things that seem maybe beneficial, like carragana and other species, they were Eastern European plants that allowed you to establish windrows and minimize soil erosion and other things. Over time, they just sort of grew unchecked, and now they've invaded and displaced a good number of native species. And so, yeah, we've got a good number of invasive plants, of all life forms. Trees like Russian olive, shrubs like carragana. Yeah, it's just a long, long list of weeds. Pennycress and many others, kind of some of the thistles, and then even grasses, downy brome, which gets called cheatgrass. It displaces native grass communities and cheats everybody on the rangeland, doesn't have much for forage value. And, in the United States and elsewhere and in Canada too, we've lost, hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of acres and millions of dollars in lost revenue just by losing ground to some of these invasive species. So it's a major concern in this part of the world.
Okay, well then, Kirby, it looks like we are about out of time, but thanks so much for the conversation. Always great to open our eyes into a broader view of a world that we don't necessarily live in.
Yeah, no, you do live in it, definitely. And I'm always glad to share some of this information. And for anybody interested, of course, we're here at the college. We're happy. Lots of the plants and other things we've talked about are on display in some of our collections, which are open to the public. So definitely come check it out anytime. Always happy to do these sorts of interviews. Take care.
That was Kirby England, a professor and floral and wetlands expert from Lethbridge College. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks so much for watching.